Wind Waker to me is one of the most weird and interesting 3D Zeldas. I feel it does quite a bit right, but also quite a lot wrong. And by this point, I've basically played every single main series 3D Zelda game until Breath of the Wild 2 comes out, but who the hell knows, when that will come out. But I can say with Wind Waker, I played the Wii U version, which I've probably mentioned before, and I can say that I've had a mixed experience. I still enjoyed what I played, but I think for now I can easily say that this isn't my favorite Zelda, and I can understand why a lot of people would say that, just because again, there was some stuff that I just really like about it and I wish was kind of replicated in other Zeldas, but I think now is a good time to actually get into what I liked and disliked about Wind Waker. One of the things that I love about this game has to be the visual style. I think the cartoony aesthetic really just makes a lot of the characters a lot more funny, and the exaggerated animations and whatever, that just really makes the visual style definitely in my top 3 for the 3D Zeldas. I definitely feel that it got better in the Wii U port just because everything looks a lot better, and I feel it gives, again, the aesthetic just a huge bump. The GameCube version still does this really well. Again, I just like the higher quality in the Wii U port. I also really enjoyed the characters, where I find them to be some of the most lively and most likable cast for any 3D Zelda that I've played. And again, that was all of them. Characters like Valu, Tetra, and Oku, also Oka, I enjoy interacting with for the most part. I feel that most of them aren't really the most developed characters out there, but it's still pretty fun to be around them, and at least that's a worthy trade-off to me. I also think that this version of Ganondorf is one of the more interesting iterations of the character. I just wish he showed up more. I also found the combat in this one to be really fast-paced and just really fluid overall. I also feel that it's still really fun, and all the attacks feel as weighted as a lot of the other entries, which is also really nice. Then there's the islands in the game, and I like how there's pretty much something to do on all of them. Well, basically all of them. It might not be 100% obvious on what you have to do, but there's always something that, you get to actually gain from it, whether it just be a new item, haul pieces, or just whatever else. The bosses in the game I also really enjoyed because it was a mix of a decent challenge to just being really fun. So my favorite bosses definitely have to be Goma, Jahala, Mulgera, and the final boss Ganondorf and his numerous phases. And I think that this version of Ganondorf definitely has to be one of his harder iterations, just because his phases I found to be pretty interesting, and his final phase is pretty aggressive, which I like. And if I'm being honest, that's really all I enjoyed with Wind Waker, and now we move on to the dislikes. One of the first things I actually ended up disliking was the dungeons, and I found them to be pretty easy for the most part. It's not really that the enemies were easy, I just found the puzzles to be the easier part, and they just again felt really basic. I felt that the worst parts were the first few dungeons up until the ones with Medley and McCall, because I felt those two were a bit harder because you had to swap between two characters, but in the end they still ended up being pretty easy. It also feels very straightforward, which sucks because games like Majora's Mask and Skyward Sword felt like you had to take the whole dungeon into consideration and go all over the place, and here again I feel you just mostly go straight, or you go to room to room to room, and without having to backtrack as much. Another part I really didn't like was that the world feels disconnected, and I understand why it is. It just isn't really for me. I still like going to each island, it's just that, you see a whole lot of nothing in the background, and maybe one of them pops up eventually. Exploration kind of suffers because of this, just because I don't want to have to go stop, get out of the boat, get on the island, and maybe do something there and just leave it. I just have less will to explore this game as much in comparison to stuff like Twilight Princess or even Majora's Mask. And I just wish it wasn't like this 100% of the time. I wish you could actually see a lot more land, but obviously that's just me. Then there's the travel times, and to me it really takes a long time in comparison to a lot of the other 3D Zeldas. I do know that in the HD version you do have the fast cell, which is a good addition. It just again feels like it takes forever. What makes it worse is that there's again nothing interesting to look in the background, so it just makes traveling a lot more boring to me. And I do know there is a fast travel option in the game, but I still found getting to each island still does take a while. I also really didn't enjoy the pacing of the story as much. since at the start it's super fast and the dungeons are again really easy to where the point where the early to mid game just did not take all that long for me. I do know that, it was kind of fixed in the HD version, the final stretch of the game, but I still found it taking a while in the final area just because of how much pieces you actually had to get. But frankly, I still wish Wind Waker didn't end up this way just because it had a lot going for it, like the characters and the bosses. Those I think I still really liked and it was really good. It fell flat the more I went on with the game just because again the dungeons were the worst part to me. I have heard that the development for the game was rushed, which makes sense on all the pacing problems and whatnot. I still wish it wasn't like this again because the characters were interesting, it's just not a lot of time was spent on them during the main quest. I can still understand why people love Wind Waker because again, I still feel like it did a lot right. It's just that to me, a lot of the other 3D Zeldas did what Wind Waker was trying to do but a little bit better. But of course, before we finish the video, let's go over the likes and dislikes. Likes, really great visual style, fun characters, really fluid combat, unique locations, and really nice bosses. Dislikes, easy dungeons, the world feels disconnected, traveling takes forever even in the HD version, and there is a bunch of pacing problems where, the pacing is either way too fast at the start, and then it gets slower by the end. But I want to hear what you guys liked about Wind Waker. Let me know in the comments below, and again, thank you all for watching.